Welcome back, Defenders. Jake here. So as I'm trying to film this video, this just happened. President Biden has announced he's not running for re-election. Here's what he says. It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president, and while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it's in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. I will speak to the nation later this week in more detail about my decision. This is pretty big news. The last time an eligible sitting president did not run for re-election was President Johnson in 1968. So tomorrow I'm going to film my monthly Q&A. There were lots of questions about US politics. I'm going to save my thoughts and reactions for tomorrow's video. But for today, let's focus on Ukraine. And everyone's talking about peace. The Russians are talking about wanting peace. The Chinese are talking about wanting peace. The Belarusians, the Hungarians. So everyone on team dictatorship and authoritarian are all screaming they want peace. So this does shape the narrative and the propaganda battle. So the Ukrainians, President Zelensky, also has to talk about peace. And we had this summit in Switzerland. There's another one coming up in, I think, 5 months. And here's a pretty shocking statement put out by President Zelensky about wanting peace. Let me read this for you. This was on the BBC. I believe that if we are united, if we follow, for example, the path of the peace summit, we can end the hot stage of the war. We can try to do it before the end of this year. The plan will be ready in any case. We want to do it. If this leads to the end of the hot stage of the war, that would be powerful and strong. It depends on us. We will prepare a plan, but the plan must be prepared with partners, and it depends on their wishes. No one should be playing with their own initiatives to end the war, and it will depend on the partners who will be pressing Russia, so that Russia starts thinking about ending the war. It doesn't mean that all territories must be recaptured. I think that the power of diplomacy might help. Yes, we must be strong on the battlefield. It's important not to retreat, to stand, and even more important to take steps that would weaken Russia on the battlefield, force it to retreat. This will give you a better position at the negotiation table. But it doesn't mean all territories should be returned with weapons only. The power of diplomacy and superiority of the whole world. By pushing Russia, you can. I think I can agree to a diplomatic solution. So is there a possible scenario where President Zelensky would agree to a peace deal with the Russians to permanently give up Ukrainian territory? And there's a lot of Ukrainians who would never support this. This is what Klitschko has to say, the mayor of Kyiv. Ukraine may have to hold a referendum to achieve peace. Any step by President Zelensky threatens political suicide. Zelensky will probably have to resort to a referendum. I don't think he will be able to come to such a painful and important agreement on his own, without the legitimization by the people. I'm not Ukrainian. I don't get a vote. I don't get a say. But I don't think President Zelensky is going to do it. I think this peace summit, the Ukrainians can try a diplomatic path, which would require countries like India and China putting pressure on the Russians to negotiate. Is that something that might ever happen? And we're getting a shift in tone on Kremlin State TV. I'm going to read for you this clip. It's pretty miraculous. And the man speaking, he's a Chechen officer, Apti Aronovich. And I've never heard this before, what he's about to say. And the fact that he was given permission to say it does signal from the Kremlin. They're having a shift in tone. They're preparing for their own people a possible ceasefire or end of the hostilities. Here's what this Chechen officer has to say. Apti, what's your personal opinion? It's understandable that the final decision is going to be made by Putin. They're not going to allow any referendums in Russia. Nonetheless, in the manner that we are proceeding now, without rushing, not quickly, making precise strikes, and attacking in some places, are we capable of defeating the enemy, or is it still necessary to prepare a large-scale offensive in accordance with military science? Well, Olga, look. First of all, we need to understand the following. To enact the large-scale offensive that we're talking about, I often hear the opinions of people quite removed from military operations. They're sitting somewhere on warm couches. Everything is going well for them. They are planning a vacation at the sea tomorrow. All of them have this discussion about why are we not taking more drastic actions? First of all, to conduct a large-scale offensive, we'll need to have mobilization in the country. In this case, we'll have to mobilize from 500,000 to 1 million people approximately in order to completely cover all of our needs in this case. Naturally, having mobilized so much of our population, we must arm and equip it. We must understand that if we conduct full-scale operations with so many of our fighters, we will have quite serious losses. So we must always evaluate how far we should carry out such large-scale actions, with such losses to immediately satisfy the desires of some representatives of our state. That is, I mean the population who doesn't understand anything about the real circumstances. I believe that the tactics chosen by our Ministry of Defense, the leadership of the Russian Federation, and the Commander-in-Chief are beneficial to us as a whole. If we remember in World War II, we must remember the actions of Marshal Zhukov, who got 1.3 million Soviet soldiers killed just to liberate one city. An easy question. Would anyone like us to get so many of our soldiers killed to liberate whichever cities, settlements, or even all of Ukraine? Of course not. So as a military officer, you're allowed to speak on Kremlin TV now about your losses? When did this happen? So this is incredible. This is a huge shift in tone from the Kremlin, allowing military officers to come on TV and say, maybe we should have peace talks. Maybe we should negotiate with the Ukrainians. If we go for total victory, that would require mobilization. That would require more Russian soldiers dying. You, sitting at home on your warm couch, you don't want to be mobilized. You don't want to die. So when Putin tones down the rhetoric and tries to get some kind of peace deal or negotiation talks going, don't criticize Putin. Otherwise, maybe you could have been mobilized. This is a weird strategy. This is basically Russia admitting defeat. For the last 2.5 years, people like Scott Ritter and all these other Kremlin propagandists claiming Ukraine was about to collapse in 1 month or 2 months or whatever, and here they are, admitting they can't win the war without mobilizing 1 million more Russian soldiers. And they don't have anything to give them. Russia's retreat from Crimea makes a mockery of the West's escalation fears. You've been watching my videos. For the last 2.5 years, it's always been Western leaders saying, don't do that, don't give that to Ukraine, this could escalate. Elon Musk himself said, if ships in the port city of Sevastopol are attacked, that would be a Pearl Harbor moment that would lead to a nuclear World War III. While the Russians have basically abandoned Crimea, the Black Sea Fleet no longer operates in the Black Sea. This hasn't triggered World War III, Russia hasn't used nuclear weapons, and Russia's now preparing their own people for a defeat. Russia's never taken the city of Kharkiv, they're never taking the city of Odessa, they're never taking the city of Zaporizhia, they're not getting Kherson back. Putin is ready to settle for anything he can get. This is good news, I guess. Warsaw made a positive decision that will help Kyiv get F-16s faster. President Zelensky said yesterday that it's been 18 months. Where are the F-16s? We keep hearing next month, next month, next month. I have no insider information here, guys. Secretary Blinken last week said they were in transit. They were being moved. And now President Zelensky said, thank you, Poland, for something. And I'm going to go ahead and assume that Poland allowed the transit of F-16s through their territory. This is good news. In show of support, Starmer invites Zelensky to attend a cabinet meeting. Starmer is expected to tell Zelensky that Britain will do more in the coming months to dent Russia's war machine, including agreeing to a new defense export support treaty. I know for my British viewers, you guys are often critical of your country and your government, but as an American, I want to thank you. I want to thank you as a Brit for being unified on this topic of Ukraine. When you look at the polling of people in the UK, it's something like less than 10% who are sympathetic to Russia's narratives. It's a lot lower than it is in France, Germany, or America. So thank you for your strong support, even with the coalition in charge of your government changing. Support for Ukraine remains strong. Thank you so much. Zelensky addresses UK cabinet, urges Starmer to show leadership on long-range strikes. There's been this weird back and forth the last 2 weeks. I reported it one way and then had to reverse it, and now I feel like I have to reverse it again. Ukraine can use British storm shadows inside of Russia, according to the new UK Defense Secretary. My interpretation of what's going on is the UK wants to allow this, but NATO partners, maybe America, France, or Germany, somebody is saying no, don't do that. So there's an internal debate happening inside of NATO, and I think Ukraine just wants a clear indication what they can and can't do before they start doing deeper strikes. Ukraine downs another Russian Su-25 warplane in the Donetsk Oblast. There is a video. It's pretty far away, but a plane is falling out of the sky. I'll link this down below if you want to see it for yourself. Another Russian Buk air defense system was destroyed. This is a pretty nice video of it going boom. I'll link it down below if you want to see it for yourself. Satellite imagery shows damage to Russia's naval base and patrol boats in Crimea. This was a drone attack that occurred on July 18th, and you can see from the fires where the Ukrainians struck. Russia can't defend Crimea anymore. A lot of things are going to go boom over the next couple months. And also, inside of Russia, the Russian Milarova military airfield was attacked by drones last night. This is about 150 kilometers from the front lines. Here's where it's located on the map. It's just on the other side of the Ukrainian border, but Russia occupies this part of Luhansk. And as of this morning, we did get satellite images confirming the damage. Here's the before and here's the after. Here's the before and here's the after. It looks like what was struck by these Ukrainian drones was a aircraft maintenance hangar, as well as a fuel and lubricant warehouse. Probably a good trade for some drones. Millions are without power in West Russia, thanks to a nuke plant failure, record temperatures, and Kyiv drone strikes. Officials at the Russian Atomic Energy Station say an emergency shutdown gutted power production capacity, but everything's perfectly safe and no radiation is leaked. Why do I not believe you, Russia? But people in these areas who have been without power are pretty upset. There are some videos online showing Russians taking to the streets, limited numbers, just protesting the power outages. And here's a group of Russians filming another one of these goofy videos to Vladimir Putin himself. So here's what ordinary Russians have to say about power outages. Dear Putin, we, the residents of apartment building Karl Liebknecht in Krasnodar, appeal to you as the guarantor of our constitutional rights to personal safety and dignified life. In our apartment buildings and the surrounding area, there was a complete absence of electricity supply in the period between 11:30 on the 18th of July to basically after midnight on the 19th. That is more than 12 hours. Under the conditions of extremely hot weather, such a long absence of electricity in the residential premises leads to the deterioration of health of the residents of these houses, deterioration of sanitary conditions, spoilage of food in the de-energized refrigerators, as well as the lack of water supply due to the water supply pumps to the floors not working without electricity. At the same time, many entertainment and secondary establishments in our city are constantly supplied with electricity. We understand the complexity of the situation with the supply of electricity to our city, but we ask for your help in the manner of establishing a fair schedule for electricity supply. These poor babies went without power for 12 hours, and they took to the streets. You just question, like, do they have any sense of awareness? Do they have any empathy for the people of Ukraine who are also going through a hot summer and don't have electricity most of the day because of them, because of their Russian attacks? So what is Russia focusing on? Russia bans the ruble toilet paper. A Moscow court has banned the sale of toilet paper with printed patterns of the 1,000 ruble bills. Let's just move on. Russian tourists cancel Crimea holidays en masse, according to Ukrainian intelligence. Russian tourists have canceled summer holiday bookings in occupied Crimea over concerns of the difficult security situation. So you don't want to go and vacation on a beach between a Russian naval base and a Russian Air Force base when cluster munitions are landing on the beach? It's so stupid, guys. What is this Eiffel Tower? What is that? Pro-war singer Shaman to stage protest concert outside the U.S. Embassy in Moscow. So this is the Kremlin getting their people ready for YouTube being blocked. 2 or 3 weeks ago, because of EU sanctions, YouTube finally blocked Shaman and his propaganda music. So now the Russian government is turning up the heat on Google and YouTube because YouTube's about to be blocked in Russia. I'm not going to cry over this. Slovakia's Fico criticizes Ukraine's oil transit ban. Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico has lambasted Ukraine's decision to halt Russian oil transit, calling the move nonsensical. This is hilarious. Ukrainian sanctions halt Lukoil deliveries to Slovakia and Hungary. So this is a question people have been asking me the last 2.5 years. If Hungary is hostile to Ukraine and working with the Russians, then why does Ukraine allow the transit of oil and gas through their territory from Russia to Hungary? And for the last 2.5 years, I've been saying the Ukrainians don't want to punish the people of Hungary for the actions of their government. But I think with Viktor Orban's world tour, going to Russia and China and Mar-a-Lago, I think that was enough for the Ukrainian parliament. And this is a classic case of F around and find out. So this pipeline that goes from Russia through Belarus, down the western side of Ukraine, into Slovakia, and then siphoned off into Hungary. And Ukraine finally shut it off after 2.5 years. And I think what Ukraine is doing is this is going to be a bargaining chip. If Ukraine has to negotiate with Viktor Orban in the future or negotiate with Putin, this is something they can just toss in there. They can say, well, resume the flow of oil and gas through our territory to Hungary and Slovakia. I do think Ukraine's going to turn this back on at some point, but they are going to squeeze the government of Hungary just a little bit So Viktor Orban just shuts up. I'm pretty sick of that guy. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. Volunteer recruitment is up 3.5 times over the past 2 months. So the Ukrainian parliament passed a new mobilization law, and this has actually encouraged Ukrainians to volunteer, to sign contracts. And the reason why is people can only be mobilized to a priority combat unit. For a non-priority rear unit, only a contract is valid. So if you want to be a maintainer or if you want to be in some kind of support role, you have to volunteer and you have to sign a contract. If you wait until you're conscripted, you're eligible and you could be sent to a combat position. Ukraine's working on it. They're getting their manpower levels up. Another piece of good news, Estonia sends another batch of Mistrals to Ukraine. These are modern, French-made, short-range anti-aircraft systems. Thank you so much to the people of Estonia. Germany allocates millions of euros for Kyiv Children's Hospital, hit by a Russian missile. Thank you so much to the people of Germany. Final clip is from the channel Freedom Today, and this man, his name is Rodrigo Figueiredo. And here's the message he wants to share.
We are in a cemetery in Lviv, Leópolis in Espanol, and this cemetery is known for the sound of the cemetery. And what is the sound of the cemetery? The sound of the flags. It's really humbling to be here, and I'm an empathic person, so I feel that these people are heroes and real warriors, defenders of liberty and democracy, like very few do. We should take example in the right sense, in the right way, about their sacrifice, because they're doing it for them, for their country, for their life. They're also doing it for us. Freedom Today.
That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.